Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and we're producing this episode for Forbes, where I'm a contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And I'm excited today to have a really remarkable entrepreneur on the show. I've known Davis now for a dozen years, since he was just a kid out there, a college kid, doing his first entrepreneurial gig with pool tables. So we'll reflect on that, I'm sure, for a minute. But in any case, Davis, welcome to the show. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Davis, you are the CEO and founder of Cotopaxi. What on earth is Cotopaxi?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll tell you where the name comes from, because that's the first thing people often wonder. It's the name of a volcano in Ecuador, one of the highest active volcanoes in the world, and I lived there as a kid. So that's where the name comes from. I used to go backpacking there with my dad, and so the name's always had special meaning to me. But Cotopaxi is an outdoor gear company where every piece of gear and apparel is tied to a specific social cause somewhere in the world. We're believers that businesses can be a source for good in the world, and this is our attempt.
Well, I want to just drill down a little bit on your history, because this isn't your first rodeo. You're a young guy. My heavens, I'm so jealous thinking about what it would be like to be your age. Your wife just had a baby. You're handsome and young and good looking, but you actually started entrepreneuring a long time ago. If I'm remembering right, my first exposure to you was at the Utah Entrepreneur Challenge, which you did very well in when you were with, I think you called it Billiard X.
That's right.
Is that right? Am I remembering right?
Yeah, you have a great memory. Actually, I wasn't sure you'd remember, but yeah, that's true.
That ended up being quite a successful little business, as I recall.
Yeah, my cousin and I, we started this little business right out of college, and we were doing exactly, the name of the business was Billiard X. We later changed to pooltables.com, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We manufactured our own brand of pool tables, and we sold them online, and ultimately through our own retail stores around the U.S. So,
and that was one of those things that people would have said you could never sell pool tables online.
That's right. That's right. But we showed them. It was 1,000-pound pool tables. They're not easy, but we ended up becoming the largest retailer of pool tables in the U.S. So still a small business, but really fun experience for us as young entrepreneurs.
Then it seems to me, if I recall, you ended up going to South America to run a business for a time. What was that?
Yeah, so we actually, my cousin and I, we both decided we were ready to move on to something new, and we ended up selling the pool table business, and we actually both went to business school. And so I was at the Wharton School, and we kind of started brainstorming ideas, and came up with about 60 ideas during our first year of business school. And we went out to Silicon Valley between the first and second year of school. Instead of doing internships, we went and just hunkered down and worked through our own ideas. And by the end of the summer, we'd narrowed, most of the summer we spent on about 4 ideas. We kind of narrowed it down to 4. And by the end of the summer, we'd identified an idea that we thought was going to be really big, which was moving down to Brazil and launching an e-commerce business in the baby space.
How did that go?
It was wild. I mean, just an incredible experience. We, so we moved down there when we graduated. We raised $4.5 million, really based on a PowerPoint and on a domain name that we'd acquired, and started building a team. And within 18 months, we'd raised about $40 million for this business, and we were Brazil Startup of the Year. So, just a really fun experience. The business is still running. My cousin's down there with a few hundred employees, and just a fantastic entrepreneurial experience for us.
So you bring a real wealth of successful experience and how to Cotopaxi. Really, there is an aspect of Cotopaxi that is different from your past ventures, in that I think more than in any of your past ventures, you have really adopted a cause. Why? Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, actually, I can tell you why. When I was in college, my family moved to Latin America when I was 4 years old. So, I was exposed to poverty that most Americans don't even understand exists in the world, and just had some really as a child, just experiences seeing things that really kind of shaped who I was. And I always had a desire to find a way to give back and lift, help lift people out of poverty. And so when I was in college, I ended up reading an article about a man named Steve Gibson. And this man had been an entrepreneur but sold his business, and he moved to the Philippines with his wife, and they ended up buying this large home, and they actually started housing poor Filipinos in this home. And they went and moved into a small little apartment, and in this home they would take 25 people at a time. They would give them room and board for 2 months, and they'd give them this crash course on entrepreneurship. And they were having amazing success. A huge percentage of these graduates were off running their own businesses. And it was just so inspirational to me. I actually cut out the article, and I actually had it in the front cover of my binder at school for the rest of my time in school for about 3 years. And it was just there to remind me of what was really important. And I was so inspired by this man, not because he was a rich or successful entrepreneur, but because he'd used the talents that he had to go lift up others and help others. And so by chance, when I graduated from university, I'd actually taken my first job out of school, and I went back on campus to go to the social impact conference. And when I was there, I was walking down the hallway, and I saw this man, Steve Gibson, getting into an elevator. I'd never met him before, but I recognized him. And so I ran and stopped the elevator from closing at the last second and got in, and I knew he couldn't escape. I had Steve Gibson with me, and I ended up just being blown away by this guy. And he's this really successful entrepreneur. He's changing thousands of people's lives. I'm a nobody, and he was acting so flattered that I even knew who he was. And so he asked me to go meet with him in his office in a couple weeks, and I tried to convince him to let me come work for him to help expand his program into Latin America, where I'd grown up. And his advice to me was, if I really wanted to make a difference in the world, that I should become an entrepreneur myself, and then 10 or 20 years down the road, I'll have the experience and hopefully the financial resources to go make a difference. And so that's why I chose to go into entrepreneurship in the first place. And so that was always in my mind about how I could use entrepreneurship as the experience I was having to lift others. And so, this last year when I was in Brazil, it kind of came to me about how I could do that.
Oh, that's great. Now tell us about what you are doing with Cotopaxi mission-wise.
Yeah. So the idea behind Cotopaxi is that I love this idea of businesses that are doing good. So of course we all know the example of Tom Shoes. We all know about Warby Parker. These brands that are doing good in the world. And the one thing that I felt we could do differently was actually helping people understand the impact. One thing that I've just loved is these experiences I've had living in Latin America. I've spent 15 years of my life in the developing world, and just connecting with people. It's what's so special. And I thought, maybe I could help people connect from a product, connect to a cause or to a person in some other part of the world. So instead of if someone buys a backpack, we don't give a backpack to someone in need somewhere in the world. We tie it to a measurable impact. And so if you buy the Kilimanjaro backpack, we give a week of education to a child in a little orphanage in Tanzania. And so if you go on the site, you can actually see that cause. You can read this, there's a little video that tells a story about this orphanage and how it was started. So really kind of connecting people with a specific cause. So all the packs are tied to educational causes. The water bottles are tied to clean water projects, and so on.
That's really inspiring. I love it. Now, tell us a little bit more about your products, briefly. Let's just get a sense of what you're selling at Cotopaxi.
Yeah, so when I built the team, I brought together a number of amazing designers. I love building businesses, but I couldn't design anything if my life depended on it. So, brought on some amazing award-winning designers that had worked for Nike, for Black Diamond, for Columbia, and Marmot. And these designers came in, and we started building amazing products. We have both technical products. So we have a pack that's gone up Everest, another pack that's gone up and summited Denali. And then we have lifestyle bags, bags that people would wear on college campus, or that they'd wear, on a work trip or traveling. So just kind of a combination of technical and lifestyle products.
Now, I want to ask you a couple of questions about the business. You've raised a fair bit of venture capital for this business. You've only been in operation a year, but you've already raised almost $10 million, right?
Yeah, so we launched in April of last year, so it's not quite a year yet. But we just closed a Series A round of venture capital financing. So we just raised 6.5 million. We'd raised 3 million about a year and a half ago, right when I moved back from Brazil to kind of launch the business. So that's been super exciting, and it's exciting to see venture capitalists that are often known as being heartless. That they're willing to invest in a business that's giving away money before we're making money. Really.
Well, that is cool. Well, I want to ask you just a couple of more personal questions. First, people, I'm sure all your employees, all your friends, I mean, so many people look up to you. But who do you look up to as a role model?
Yeah. I talked a little bit about Steve Gibson a little earlier, and this is someone, just to give you a little more insight on him, but this is someone that I think has dedicated his kind of the latter years of his life towards helping others. And when he moved to the Philippines, he was probably in his early 60s. This is when most people are kind of like, hey, I can finally retire, I can go spend time with my grandkids or travel and enjoy life. And instead, he spent the last 15 plus years giving back and lifting others, and so that's always been super inspirational to me. And he's been a mentor throughout my entrepreneurial years. As I started that first business with the with the pool tables, and I've been in touch with him since I was in Brazil, and even back when I moved back to the States. We've gotten together quite a few times, and he invited me, actually, something kind of exciting. He invited me to go back to Peru last year, where they were launching his program in Peru. Which was, for me, just so exciting, because that's kind of my, 10, 15, 12 years ago, that was the first idea I had, was like, hey, how can we take this down to Latin America? So I actually went down to Peru and was able to go help teach that inaugural class. So it was, just really fulfilling. But, Steve Gibson, for me, has been someone that I've always been able to look up to, not just because he's a great entrepreneur, but because he's always looking to lift others, and he's just one of those people that's a giver. I love people that are, those people that are always looking to lift up others, and it's not about themselves.
No, that's great. Well, everyone who's watching the show has one thing in common. We've got all kinds of things, a broad audience, people from all walks of life, but one thing in common, and that is a desire to do more good in the world. I call it the greatest common factor, right? Not the least common denominator, but the greatest common factor is that desire to do good. Give us one tip to help us do more good in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can just tell you from my experience what's kind of been most fulfilling, and that's, sometimes I think it can be overwhelming. I think everyone, like you said, wants to do good. They want to have an impact somehow, but sometimes it's overwhelming thinking about, like, hey, how do I even do that? You see incredible people that have dedicated their life, like Steve Gibson, or like someone like Mother Teresa, and you're like, man, I just can't do that. I just don't have the financial resources or the time. And what I found is that you just have to do it one thing at a time. So, I think looking for a way to make an impact in your local community, just go volunteering one day at some cause that you believe in. Helping, finding out what it is that you're passionate about and finding a way to use that skill or that talent to help others. I know one example that I can share that really kind of maybe impacted me is, when I was in undergrad, my wife and I actually met there in undergrad, and I wanted her to have an experience, in Latin America like I'd had growing up. And so I found an internship in Peru. It was unpaid, but it was working for a nonprofit, and we could do it together. So it was just a perfect situation. So we went down to Peru, and when we were there, we spent a little bit of time in a little city called Cusco, which is near Machu Picchu. So we're going to Machu Picchu, and as soon as we got to the city, we bought a meal. We were sitting on this bench in the main plaza, and there was a little boy that came up to us with a bunch of other little kids, and they were trying to sell us things. And this little boy sat next to me on a shoe shining kit, and he kept insisting to shine my shoes. I was wearing tennis shoes, so I kept telling him not going to happen, But having grown up in Latin America, I immediately kind of connected with this little kid, and again, I wasn't looking to make some huge impact, but for me, I just felt drawn to help this little kid in some way. And I noticed that because he was hanging around, I thought, maybe he's hungry. So I offered him the rest of my food, and the way he ate it was just shocking to me. And so I'll never forget how fast he ate that food. And we came to the realization at that moment, it was like, wow, like these kids aren't just working for fun or to like get extra money. They're doing this to survive. And so that night when we ate our dinner, we saved some food and we went out and looked for this little boy. His name was Edgar. And we found Edgar right away. He took the food that we gave him, and he was just so grateful, and he ran back and started sharing it with his little friends. And it was just so touching to us to see that. And we just started looking for Edgar every day when we were there, and it was just the highlight of our day every day. Our last night there, we stumbled on him, close to the middle of the night, sleeping on the street. And it was heartbreaking to see a little 9-year-old boy on the cold street, his sweater pulled over his knees to keep him warm. And I asked him like why he was there, and he told me that someone had stolen his shoe shining kit, and he knew if he went home, his dad was going to beat him because he helped support the family, and he'd lost this tool that helped him do that. And we were poor college kids, we didn't have a whole lot, but we gave him the cash that we had, and that night we could hardly sleep just worrying about this little boy. The next day we got on a bus to leave Cusco, and as we were on that bus, we looked out the window and we saw Edgar on the street, and he saw us, and we had just enough time to slide open this window of the bus, and he ran next to the bus waving goodbye to us, and he held like a big bag of candy in his arm that he bought that he was now selling in the street. So, my wife and I, we committed to each other on that bus that we would find a way, to make a difference for kids like Edgar. And we didn't change Edgar's life. I certainly feel like he changed ours. He gave us new direction, and it was just a small little thing, but it ended up changing me. And so that's my encouragement to everyone is like, just try to just meet one person, try to make an impact in one person's life, and I promise it will change you forever. So
that's a powerful story. Powerful story. Now tell us how we can find Cotopaxi stuff.
Yeah, it's really easy actually, because you can do it anywhere you're at. You can just go on your phone or on your computer and just go to our website, Cotopaxi.com. It's a little tricky word, but it's spelled the way it sounds, so Cotopaxi. And if you just go to Cotopaxi.com, we sell all our gear there, direct to consumer. So you get better quality gear for a better price than if you're going to buy it in a retail store. We make and design all of our own products. We have higher, by selling directly to consumers instead of through a retail store, we have a little bit more margin, so we can put that back into the product to make it better, and we can also use that extra margin to get back to these social causes that we care about.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we really thank you for being with us today and wish you every success, Davis.
Thanks, Devin. Really appreciate being here with you.
All righty. Let's do some good.